Welcome to the U.S. Manufacturing Today podcast, your hub of information about the U.S. manufacturing and distribution industry. Brought to you by Variable, the on-demand labor solution revitalizing and optimizing your operation, enabling just-in-time response to demand, more efficient production, and lower cost per unit. And now your host and head of reindustrialization at Variable, Matt Horan.
Hey guys, welcome back to U.S. Manufacturing Today, sponsored by Variable. I'm your host, Matt Horan. Thank you for listening over the past couple of weeks as we're excited to bring you up-to-date information and be your go-to hub for U.S. manufacturing and distribution industry news. Today's episode is all about Liberation Day. What does that mean? It looks like it means the moment when cheap foreign imports lose their grip on the U.S. consumer market, or at least that's what's starting to take shape. This week, the U.S. officially tightened the screws and balanced the playing field on total calculated global trade deficits, including fees and other components like VAT. As a consumer, you'll probably start to notice companies like Temu and China-based Amazon sellers with new tariffs aimed at de minimis shipments. Those small, duty-free packages flooding the U.S. from abroad may not be at your doorstep every time you get home. But what does it mean for the overall economy? Here's what we're covering today. How these new tariffs are closing the loophole that let foreign sellers dominate U.S. e-commerce, which countries stand to gain, and why Vietnam is in the spotlight early, the broader economic strategy, treasury yields, debt refinancing, and trade negotiations. And, most importantly, why this is a major win for U.S. manufacturing, productivity, and the American worker. For years, China-based sellers have gamed the system, exploiting a loophole in U.S. trade law known as the de minimis rule. Here's how it worked. Any package valued at under $800 could enter the U.S. duty-free. Companies like Temu and countless Chinese Amazon sellers flooded the market with ultra-cheap products, avoiding tariffs and regulatory oversight in many instances. Meanwhile, U.S. manufacturers and retailers were forced to play by a different set of rules, paying duties, complying with safety regulations, and managing higher labor costs. But as of this week, the U.S. government has finally stepped in, imposing new tariffs on de minimis shipments. This does two things. Number one, it levels the playing field, forcing foreign sellers to pay their fair share. And two, it constricts the flood of cheap foreign imports and hopefully shifts demand back towards U.S. domestic production. And this isn't just about e-commerce. It's about reclaiming some industrial strength. With fewer artificially cheap goods undercutting the market, U.S. manufacturers can compete on quality, innovation, reliability, instead of being forced into a race to the bottom. This also ties directly to many of the national security issues highlighted by the new administration. Many of the de minimis shipments are fueling the scourge of the synthetic opioid epidemic, which has further hollowed out the industrial center of the country. Now, let's talk about some of those countries that were on the trade list. For years, companies thought they were outsmarting the trade war by shifting manufacturing to places like Vietnam. The idea was pretty simple. There's lower labor costs than China. It's a way to bypass tariffs imposed on Chinese goods, which is usually what's in the spotlight. And countries like Vietnam typically had favorable trade relations with the United States at the time. It was a big gamble, a big bet that moving to Vietnam would be a permanent solution to rising costs and trade tensions with China, but it appears to have backfired. Fast forward to today, Vietnam is now one of the highest tariff countries under reciprocal trade policy. The same loopholes that made Vietnam attractive, cheap labor, lax oversight, and reliance on foreign investment are now liabilities. U.S. policymakers have recognized the pattern and are cracking down, ensuring that companies shifting production there won't escape new trade restrictions. So what's next? For manufacturers, there's no more easy way out. The era of jumping from one low-cost country to another is ending. Instead of chasing the next Vietnam, companies need to focus on reshoring, investing in some type of automation, and maybe some vertical integration in their supply chain to build a sustainable, competitive manufacturing base here in the U.S. Let's talk about some of the bigger economic plays as well. Let's zoom out and connect this to the broader strategy, because the next moves are pretty predictable if you follow the script. I saw a great post on X the other day, and I think this sentiment is starting to take shape. The script is pretty obvious. Get this down to sub 3.5, which is the 10-year treasury yield, refinance the debt, initiate quantitative easing, and roll back the tariffs as countries negotiate and refinance and get markets back up. What does that mean? The Fed and the Treasury want to bring long-term rates down, ideally below 3.5% on the 10-year yield. Lower rates allow for refinancing of the debt at cheaper cost. The thinking here is that the lower rates will show up in the market and help U.S. manufacturers investing in expansion. The U.S. has leverage. Some tariffs may get rolled back, but only in exchange for trade concessions that benefit domestic industry. This is not a return to free trade fantasy land where there's a lack of enforcement and fair trade will have to be the norm going forward. It's about using leverage strategically, forcing foreign competitors to negotiate on U.S. terms. And if we play this right, we get a couple of things: a more competitive manufacturing sector, stronger supply chains, likely more integrated, and an economy built on production, not just financial engineering. So what does all this mean for the American industry and the American worker? First, we're shifting away from an economy dominated by cheap imports and debt and trade deficits, and back towards an economy driven by production and investment. Second, this is the best opportunity in decades for mid-sized manufacturers, those who can adapt quickly and scale up domestic production. And finally, this is a major win for the American worker, synonymous with the middle class. More industrial work opportunities, higher wages as domestic demand rises, a stronger, more self-reliant economy are all byproducts of this policy. For years, people have asked, when will the U.S. manufacturing comeback happen? It looks like the answer is right now. But it won't happen on its own. It takes leadership, capital, and commitment to real production, not just financial games. So here's where we stand. New tariffs are forcing a correction in the consumer market, which is what you'll probably start to see over the next couple of weeks. Global supply chains are shifting, but the U.S. must seize the moment. The next phase, lower interest rates, which are the target, and targeted trade negotiations, will set the stage for a stronger, more competitive manufacturing base. We're at the start of a new chapter in American industry, but it's up to us, business leaders, policymakers, and manufacturers to make the most of it. To stay ahead of the curve and to help plan your strategy, please check out our website at variableops.com and under the resources section titled Trump 2.0, where you can see the framework around upcoming policies and how it will impact you. Our message to you again is congratulations. To the operations leaders who have survived, fought, and always have optimism, keep building. We're looking forward to our next couple of episodes where we have some exciting guests that will dive further into these topics. Thank you again for joining us as we navigate this generational change and learning more about how you can make your way.